Here are some of the major pieces of the skeleton that needed to be repaired. This shoulder blade, shoulder clavicle, a lot of ribs broke off, and some major cracks. You can see some of the old repairs too, that darker area. Some of those repairs held up with the fiberglass, some of those repairs gave way. You can also see a lot of that kind of rough fiberglass, that pokey, looks like little fiberglass needles sticking out. We really want to take care of those, smooth those out. They are give you awful splinters and very difficult to work with. But this is definitely a big piece that needs some repair. We can work on the inside, and we can put fiberglass on the inside and the outside of those cracks. For the rib cage itself, I unscrewed all of the screws along the spine to separate the two pieces to make it a lot easier to work with. There are a few cracks from the previous repair you can see sutured together with some zip ties and fiberglass overlay. We're going to repeat that process on the cracks, the new cracks, but we're also going to spend a lot of time before any of that to take care of all these little loose bits of fiberglass. And reattaching the ribs too is sometimes a challenge. There's a lot of ribs get broken off. There's less surface area for the ribs to get epoxied, but the good news is you've got a few different attachment points, and they with enough fiberglass kind of overlapping the joints, you can create quite a strong bond. For materials, I'm starting with the West Systems epoxy. This is their 105 resin and their 205 hardener. It's their main, most common use epoxy. And I'm using the pump system that they have to get the measurements as accurate as possible. Some mixing cups, disposable mixing cups, some popsicle sticks to mix it up, and then the fiberglass fabric I just picked up on Amazon. I don't know anything about the particular weight or weave. It's kind of just a general purpose, something like you would find for doing like a Bondo kit, auto body repair or something like that. Good scissors to cut it, and of course as you mix up the epoxy resin, make sure you are wearing gloves. So I'm just going ahead and drilling these holes. I was a little bit surprised in order to get the zip ties to sort of, I want the zip ties to be able to, I guess, not get constrained by the hole. So when they get pulled tight, I don't want the hole kind of pinching the zip tie off. So I'm going to make these just a little bit bigger. Basically just pairing up across the crack. Two holes that will hopefully draw this. The other thing I did was just use some emery board or sandpaper. And I just ran it over all the areas where I presume I'm going to put epoxy. So do that, and then I'll probably give that a quick wipe down. Wiped it down to get all the dust off of it with a rag. But I'm going to give it a quick wipe down with acetone or ethanol, rubbing alcohol at least, whatever I get around, just to clean off any oils and dirt to help the epoxy stick better. But right now, and then pull it so that the sort of connection is on the backside, I guess would be better. So it's less obvious, but whatever. Now the idea is when we have you can only really get these so tight, but I'm actually now starting to think that I'll just put the fiberglass right over this surface. So I kind of like that. All right, so
4 zip ties, those went together pretty good. The crack is closed pretty nicely. I've wiped it down with some acetone, roughened it up with sandpaper, then cleaned it up with the acetone, and now I'll try to get this epoxied. And you know, I'm really just gonna try to be patient, epoxy it inside or outside, maybe the inside too, and then handle these rib connections totally separate. All right, I'm really happy with this step so far. So mixed up 1 pump each, mixed it real good. You just almost can't over mix this stuff, but cut out that strip, laid it on, and then just kind of cut it so that it wrapped just over the edge there of where the shoulder mounts. I'm not sure, I don't remember what the pot life is, the working time of this epoxy is. I think it's like 20 minutes. We'll find out in a bit, but I'm just kind of letting it sort of set up, and I'm only concerning myself with laying in this area right now, getting some overlap of the epoxy down into that seam, and then just spreading out the edge along here too. So, okay, so I'm very happy with how this crack repair came out. Epoxy looks good, fiberglass looks good. I will need to go through, cut this back out, flatten it out, and then add in some kind of reinforcement strips back here, probably in between the sutures. But you know, it's a good start. I like it so far. And the other big piece I did was this one. Also, I like got the sutures with the zip ties, and then pretty much one big piece of fiberglass. And I might just smooth some of these Sharpies out. But I will do on the back side some cleanup, and I'll put some reinforcing strips just in between. So here's a good example where when I got this crack, let's see here, when I got this crack totally lined up perfectly, and right now it's just sort of under tension, like it sort of popped into place, perfect fit. And then the zip tie is not really doing actually a lot. It's kind of just the springiness of the plastic kind of wedging it into the right position, which I'm going to take advantage of. But all right, so we made some more progress, but this will be probably like one of the single biggest cracks. But I do find that the big cracks are actually kind of easier, and there's a lot more material to work with, and they line up pretty good. But you can see sort of down here is an area that we'll have to really make sure we get a good piece of fabric spanning that small little island that's cracked, but we'll make sure we tuck some fiberglass up in here and get it around. Kind of, you know, it'll be tricky because it's more three-dimensional, but I think we can do that, and we'll go at it again from the other side too once the first layer sets up. But same process, I'll just drill holes, hold them up, and then suture them with the zip ties. All right, so we are moving ahead here. We've got all the major cracks on the shoulder scapula, I think, repaired. So on the inside, I've put in the strips to reinforce, and you're looking at, and this is like the two crack. This is crack from, or I forget which one is which now, but one was cracked 2 years ago, and one was cracked last year. So, but they're both repaired, fully reinforced with now like 2 layers of fiberglass cloth and epoxy. I'm going to go through and I think really you just got to do this, but all these little glass bits here, these are like hypodermic needles of epoxy and glass, and one wrong move and you get this in your finger, and it's really unpleasant. And especially if anyone's going to handle this, assemble this later. I'm going to take a Dremel sander or whatever you have, and again, wear a respirator, work outside, don't do this inside, and just sand all of that smooth, knock down all of those little bits. Broken off rib cage reattached, so these ribs broke off. This will be probably one of the more tricky parts in that there isn't a ton of material to kind of grab onto here, so I'll match up each of the ribs to where it detached, and then find the points in the sternum and at the collarbone where it attaches. It's going to be really dependent on using the zip ties to sort of pinch point those rib locations and get those, but I think once we do that, we'll be in pretty good shape. And then I've got the last rib now kind of triple reinforced here with a couple layers, and again, I'm not going to leave all this as is. I'm going to cut it back. You can razor blade it back and then sand it smooth, flush, and then, you know, when you sand it too, you're kind of making a lot less noticeable that there is ever a repair there, and from a distance you'll never notice it. So that's looking really good. So one thing that I totally realized too is when I'm going back to bolt the spine back together, the screws that came out and the screws that are included with the standard Home Depot unit, they're not meant really to sort of come in and out, but the heads are rusting, and a few of the heads just snapped right off. So swap in some brass inserts. These aren't really ideal, but they'll get the job done. So get some brass inserts and use a soldering iron to push those into the existing holes, and that will give you a threaded hole for a stainless steel screw of the right size. So I'm going to work on that now. First, I'm going to get these broken bolts and broken screws out, and then insert these. We'll see. Okay, so here's the final product. All the rib cage back together. And the shoulder blades are all intact. Still a few small cracks. Repaired up here too. But he's up.